From iron cometh strength, from strength cometh will, from will cometh faith, from faith cometh honor, from honor cometh iron. This is the unbreakable litany of the Iron Warriors Legion. Hello, and welcome back to the Wisdom Warhammer channel, and in today's video I'll be talking about the history of the Iron Warriors Legion. I will talk about what they did during the Great Crusade before Perturabo was found, and then their time during the Great Crusade after Perturabo was found. Then I will talk about their time during the Horus Heresy, and then I will finish up with how the Iron Warriors were structured. Like in my other videos, I do not own the artwork in the video, and all things Warhammer are owned by Games Workshop and Black Library. With the intro out of the way, let's get the video started, shall we? The Iron Warriors were the 4th Legion that was created right after the Emperor's Children. So they did participate in some small engagement during the Unification Wars, but those records are lost to time. The Legion was founded on top of a recidivist fortress on the Aero Plateau of Sek Emrak. The warlords and warriors of the gun tribes around the area provided a massive amount of recruits for the 4th, and the gene seed of the 4th was one of the legions that had a stable gene seed, and they also had below average resistance to bionics. When the Selenar were mass producing the 4th Legion, they had several battalions, while some of the other legions were barely a few hundred, but they would eventually catch up to the 4th in numbers. They got a massive number of recruits from the 3rd Legion due to the amount of gene seed acceptance rate, while the Emperor's Children was a bit more difficult due to the Blight. While the other legions were gaining numbers, the 4th Legion worked alongside the Dark Angels and White Scars, and when the Iron Warriors went to the other planets in the Sol system, they played a major part in the Battle of Mir Yaset on Venus against the Lethal Golem, which was an army that was under the control of the War Witches that ruled Mir Yaset. The Emperor led the 4th personally, and they became the battering ram in the Legion for wars of attrition. The Emperor was so impressed with their service and skills during the battle against the War Witches that the first shipment of new equipment from Mars was to the Iron Warriors, and also had the most equipment in the early years of the Crusade. They also had a lot of legionaries and were the biggest due to their recruitment rate, which was very good, and when the Sol system was conquered and the Iron Warriors were about to lead the 8th Expeditionary Fleet. The 4th Legion were the ones who destroyed fortresses and fought battles of attrition, and they were definitely the battering ram of the legions, but they were extremely stubborn and refused to be adaptive. Horus did like their stubbornness, and he continued to use the 4th, and they were sent to some of the more grueling war zones that required extremely hard determination. One thing they did that other legions didn't do, which was having the most garrisons during the Great Crusade and having extremely fortified fortresses that rivaled the Imperial Fists. One of the more costly battles during the Great Crusade was during the liberation of the Forge world named Echalidon, which almost caused the destruction of the 8th Expeditionary Fleet and the deaths of 29,000 Iron Warriors. They still refused to adapt to the situation and still used their normal tactics of heavy artillery and armored spearheads, which did work eventually, but it took them a year to conquer the Forge world. But while the Legion was dealing with that campaign, in another part of the galaxy, the Emperor had found the Primarch of the 4th on the planet of Olympia, and his name was Perturabo. When the Emperor met Perturabo, he had already conquered all of Olympia, but he wasn't the ruler. He was a warlord for the Tyrant of Alokos. The world of Olympia was a planet covered in high mountains, with city-states in between the rocks, and due to this rugged terrain, the fortresses of these city-states were massive. During Perturabo's time on this planet, he had an affinity for cold logic and was a master of technology, which made him a very skilled engineer, just like the Iron Warriors. Just like the other Primarchs, the Emperor gave his son the title of ruler of Olympia, and the headquarters of the Iron Warriors was now on the homeworld of Perturabo, and he called his legion to him. When he looked at the records of campaigns of the Iron Warriors, he looked at how they waged war before he met them. He found the 4th Legion wanting, and he realized he needed to restructure them, and it was extremely cold and brutal, and he used decimation. It was a lottery. 1 out of 10 Iron Warriors were beaten to death by his brothers, and from this showed the future of Perturabo's reign. It would be brutal and unforgiving. Even before the Fourth reunited with the Primarch, the Iron Warriors already had their Primarch's military qualities, and with Perturabo using Olympia as a new recruiting world. The first campaign that the Iron Warriors fought in with their Primarch was near Olympia, and it was a moon base that was called the Rock of Judgment, and it was against the Black Judges, who were myths among the people of Olympia. When the Fourth launched attacks against the Black Judges, they showed no mercy and slaughtered the forces of the Black Judges and obliterated their fortresses, and Perturabo collected the heads of the Black Judges himself, claiming his first victory with his reforged legion. During the battle against the so-called Black Judges, who were a group of advanced mutant humans that ruled upon a cluster of moons on the edge of the Olympia system and have survived against the Marauders and Xenos. The Black Judges were the shield for the other planets in the system, but they were the boogeymen that only protected the planets in exchange for the young and healthy. The beginning of the battle was won in the void, and the Black Judges' fleets were destroyed instantly, and soon the ground battle would begin. Heedless of the Legion deaths, the fury of the Fourth and their Primarch was great, and the boarding squads ripped and tore through void ships of the Black Judges. While the Legion fleet was burning the ships of the enemy, the Legion landed armored companies after destroying the defenses of the Rock of Judgment. That is when the flames of fury truly burned. The Legion forces charged into the fortresses of the Black Judges and crushed them, slaughtering the warriors of the Black Judges, and Perturabo was next to his legionaries as they blasted and cut their way through. As the casualties of the Iron Warriors mounted, the fury of the Fourth continued to burn, and Perturabo found the rulers that called themselves the Black Judges and collected their heads. From this battle, the Fourth Legion had been reborn through the burning flames alongside their Primarch as the engines of war for the Imperium. But the Primarch of the Ultramarines, Reboot Gilliman, criticized Perturabo's brutal methods inside his legion. For example, the decimation ritual, because Reboot Gilliman and his legion fought alongside the Fourth Legion on multiple campaigns and liked how they waged war in some of the Iron Warriors who were in the legion. Perturabo didn't care for the complaints of his brother, but other Primarchs would agree with the complaints of the Primarch of the Ultramarines, but the Emperor would not hear any of it. Those Iron Warriors who survived the Fourth self-decimation ritual, the lesson from this ritual was simple. Death would be the price of failure in the eyes of their Primarch. This sin would not be one of failure to the service of the Great Crusade, but instead a sin of not reaching their full potential. They then conquered the rest of the Maratar cluster, and here are some of the major battles after the death of the Black Judges. They destroyed the Xenos called the Ectocerids on Verakoya, and subjugated the renegade fiefdom on the planet called Lysos. And from this conquest, Perturabo ended the schism. The renegade Night World had a relationship with the Mechanicus and rebelled against the Imperium, and after the Iron Warriors assault the Mechanicus, had begun a good relationship with Perturabo and the Iron Warriors due to this battle. From completing this conquest of this cluster in the edge of Olympia sector, the Iron Warriors were led by their Primarch back to the planet of Olympia. They would get new recruits and allow the Mechanicus to change Olympia into a world that was capable of producing weapons for the Iron Warriors, and new shipyards were created. Instead of changing their ways, the Iron Warriors from the war in the Maratar cluster had turned the Iron Warriors from the battering ram to the relentlessly unyielding beast of war that consumed entire armies, no matter the cost. When the Iron Warriors were refilled and resupplied, a new expeditionary fleet was recreated, and it was numbered the 125th. With Perturabo at the head of this fleet and a full legion, he wanted to conquer all in his path with iron and flame, and he didn't care for the casualties, only brutal efficiency. As they fought alongside the other legions, they gained a brutal reputation during combat, which pushed away the ideas of kinship between the Primarchs and the legions. But the legions they fought alongside acknowledged that they were effective in armored assaults and heavy artillery bombardments. No matter the size of the fortress, they would reduce it to rubble, and any stronghold they would storm, no matter if it cost a heavy toll of Imperial Guard or Astartes. As time went on, the wedge of bitterness between the Iron Warriors and the other legions would grow, and alongside came the feelings of pride, paranoia, and resentment began to grow inside the hearts of the legion. From the grim methods of the savage examples that Perturabo had set for the legion had awoken a dark reflection of the Iron Warriors' Primarch. The Iron Warriors gained their father's suspicions, malevolent distrust and callous indifference to life grew inside them larger and larger as time went on, and they gained ruthless determination, cold intellect, and strength that he wished to unlock in his legion. From the amount of casualties the Iron Warriors had during the Great Crusade, they were obviously first due to their wars of attrition and how bad the wars were, but they were not like the Dark Angels who fought the deadliest threats. The Iron Warriors refused to adapt. Instead, their stubbornness caused unnecessary deaths of both Astartes and Imperial Guard, and there was one rival legion that they had a bitterness towards, but it was mostly Perturabo who held this bitterness. This bitterness was toward the Primarch Rogel Dorn and the Imperial Fist, who were the opposite of the Iron Warriors because they were the fortress masters who could build a well-defended fort. The Imperial Fists were good siege masters as well, but they were less stubborn than the Iron Warriors, and Perturabo and Rogel Dorn knew that Perturabo was bitter towards him, but he didn't care for it. But going back to them during the Great Crusade, they never called for aid or resources because they saw this as weakness, which cost them even more resources and them needing more recruits from Olympia, which eventually cost the planet. Even the Imperial Guard didn't want to serve alongside the Iron Warriors because it costed a lot of Imperial Guard, and whenever an Imperial Guard regiment fought alongside them, it almost wiped them all out. Even if the Imperial Guard generals failed, the Primarch would either kill them or tell them they are weak and need to be more ruthless, which would cost more soldiers' lives. Also, going into the relationship with the Mechanicum, not all the tech priests liked the Lord of Iron, but they acknowledged his intellect for technology, but did not trust him or his legion due to their mindset. By the last solar decades of the Great Crusade, the Iron Warriors had more rivalries than true friendships, which is not what the Emperor intended, and in the final campaigns before the Horus Heresy would be extremely bad. Against the Orc Wall led by war boss Overdog Mashug, and like the other wars, it was one of heavy attrition, and they were assisted by the White Scars and Space Wolves. When the Iron Warriors began to fight the Orc orbital defenses after the White Scars and Space Wolves attempted to destroy them, but failed until the Iron Warriors obliterated them. After the Iron Warriors broke through the orbital defenses, and with the other Legion forces behind them, they landed their forces, which made the fight truly start. While the Iron Warriors did their normal way of war, which the Space Wolves and White Scars looked at as unnecessary casualties, but the Iron Warriors came out on top with the head of the war boss. One Xenos race that caused so much damage against the Legion, and they were called the Harud, and they fought them multiple times. The Harud was a technological/biological species that had weapons that caused decay against their foes, and they reaped a lot of the Iron Warriors, but the 4th Legion refused to adapt. They did eventually kill a bunch of Harud, and still their bitterness was higher than ever, and this would build into the Horus Heresy. And one thing they still did during the Great Crusade, and that was building heavily defended fortresses. This one is the only good thing about the Iron Warriors, because these fortresses provided a sense of safety for the people of the planet, and from this, the Imperial forces knew that the supply lines of the Great Crusade would be protected. But there would be a small number of Iron Warriors who led the Imperial Guardsmen who were stationed there, but being under the command of Iron Warriors made the population of the planet feel disgruntled. But everything the Iron Warriors did well and the victories that they claimed were empty and meaningless, which made the bitterness that Perturabo felt grow to a raging fire that would explode on Olympia. Because the only major recruiting world of the Iron Warriors was of course Olympia, which eventually decayed the infrastructure of the planet. The reason why is because all the boys were taken, which caused a shortage of people, and the people rebelled because they didn't want to send their sons into the meat grinder of the Iron Warriors Legion. Hearing that his homeworld rebelled, Perturabo killed the messenger and then he ordered his entire legion back to Olympia. The Iron Warriors in their prime arc were not really in the mood to deal with the rebellions in the Imperium because they were in the midst of killing a Rohirrim infestation. So to be nice, he offered the rulers a choice: either kill a certain number of their citizens or the Iron Warriors would do it themselves. Then Perturabo realized that they wouldn't change, so he ordered his legion to slaughter a massive chunk of the planet and slave the rest. The last place he destroyed on Olympia was adoptive land, and his adoptive sister became the ruler after his cruel adoptive father died. And she actually cared for Perturabo and treated him with kindness. Her name was Calafine. So when him and a small force of Iron Warriors breached the throne room of Caliphone, his sister called him and his legion out as being a bunch of man-children. She said that Perturabo wanted to be noticed and wanted people to look at him as more than a weapon, but he responded with bitterness to the people that wanted to give him credit. Caliphone may have been calling out Perturabo, but she was calling out him and his Iron Warriors because they wanted to be recognized for their deeds and wanted to have the highest honors. Sadly, due to Perturabo being himself, he stabbed his sister's neck, and he realized after looking at a pyre of the destroyed cities and seeing his warriors enslave the people of Olympia. He finally broke down after he saw one of his legionaries approach a weeping woman cradling a family member's body. And as the woman saw the legionary, he saw and felt her fear. When the Iron Warrior brutally butchered the woman, the Lord of Iron fell to his knees and felt utter despair. Because one moment his legion was being the protectors of the Imperium, then in the next they were committing genocide against their own people. When he and the Iron Warriors left the ruined world, they began to realize what they did, but they didn't know how to respond other than being bitter, and they were in limbo. But then a beacon of hope arrived. As the Lord of Iron was trying to find a way to right his wrong, before that happened, he and his legion had learned of the virus bombing of Isfahan III by Horus and 3 other legions. He also heard of the Space Wolves attacking the Thousand Suns at Prospero. Then they were ordered to destroy the traitors, but the Lord of Iron and his sons joined the traitors in secret. The reason they became traitors was because of the butchery at Olympia, and possibly the most petty reason was because of the rivalry between the Imperial Fists. So, on the planet of Isfahan V, alongside the Night Lords, Wordbearers, and Alpha Legion, they decided to gun down the 3 Loyalist legions, almost causing their extinctions. Then, after the drop site massacre, the Iron Warriors were ordered to kill the Imperial Fists at the world of Hydra Cordatus. When the Lord of Iron arrived alongside his legion, he ordered them to systematically destroy everything around the Imperial Fist garrison, and the reason they did this was to show the 7th Legion that they were better. So then, after all that useless destruction, they turned their attention to the Imperial Fist garrison, and it was horrifying for the Loyalists. 300 Imperial Fists and thousands of regular people were slaughtered, and in the final battle, Perturabo led the last push and killed the last of the Loyalists within minutes. Then after doing this scorched earth policy on the planet of Hydra Cordatus, he then took his Iron Warriors fleet and took them to assist the Emperor's children in the hunt for the Angel Exterminatus. As they went to meet with Fulgrim and his legion, the worlds that had Iron Warrior garrisons were ordered to take over those worlds and give those resources to the War Master's armies. On the planet of Fall, a fleet of Imperial Fists were attacked by a fleet of Iron Warriors led by Perturabo, but they failed to destroy them because the Imperial Fists were able to escape and go back to Terra. This void battle above Fall was an important one because it had hundreds of both Iron Warriors and Imperial Fist ships fighting, which caused both sides a lot of dead Marines and regular people. The Lord of Iron, seeing that the Imperial Fist escaped, probably had a temper tantrum, but he probably calmed down after saying that he proved himself and the Iron Warrior supremacy. As the Iron Warriors and their Primarch arrived to meet with the Emperor's children and Fulgrim, they saw what happened to the 3rd Legion, and it was horrifying. They saw the mutilated Marines of the 3rd and their enhancements and new weaponry, and saw that the beautiful 3rd Legion that they knew was gone and fell into the grips of chaos, and Perturabo hated it. But they worked together, but they kept the Emperor's children at an arm's distance, which was a good thing. The Iron Warriors were briefed of what they were tasked with retrieving, and they went into the Eye of Terror to the Chrome World called Idris, which was the seat of power for the Eldar Empire. The object they were supposed to get was called the Sepulchre of Isha's Doom, which was deep in the core of the Eldar Citadel, and there was a prison for the Angel Exterminatus, which was something dark and ancient. When the traitor fleet arrived in orbit, the Iron Warriors began bombardments to destroy any enemy fortifications before landing their ground forces. Then, after this bombardment, flocks of Thunderhawks, Stormbirds, Warhawks, and heavy planetary landers began to drop off war gear alongside the legionaries of the 3rd and 4th and their primarchs with Titans and Traitor Guard to assist. This was just the first wave out of 8 that would be used in this battle, and for 5 hours there would be no combat, but Perturabo, being cautious, he ordered his Iron Warriors to dig and fortify just in case. Then after the 5 hours, the first combat began, and it was in the Eldar constructs that awoke because they had arrived at the core of the Citadel. With the power of She Who Thirsts being felt in this ancient Eldar world, the constructs began to butcher the invaders, and they were doing well until the other waves came in. The Iron Warriors held the line and followed their Primarch deeper, and they would find their objective, but this good feeling would not last because Perturabo was being used as a sacrifice for the ascension of Fulgrim. Due to this insult, the Iron Warriors were almost destroyed alongside their father on the planet after the Emperor's children disappeared, but because the Krone world was beginning to crumble into a black hole. After the Battle of Idris, the Iron Warriors fought in a number of battles on the way to regroup with the other traitor forces. They fought at Talaran. This planet was a beautiful planet and it had forests that covered the planet, but after the Iron Warriors used their virus bombs to destroy the nature of the planet. Then the Iron Warriors waged a war of armor with over 1 million armored assault vehicles, but they were pushed back and were not able to complete their objective of retrieving a powerful Chaos artifact. After they retreated from the world of Talaran, they were ordered to watch over the worlds at the War Master's back because the Ultramarines were destroying supply lines and needed to be held back. By the late part of the Crusade in Horus Heresy, the Iron Warriors were overextended, undersupplied, and like before, engaged in thankless sieges and battles against the Ultramarines and their war fleets being led by Perturabo. Then, this course of battles ended because the Lord of Iron and his legion were called to bring Angron and his world leaders to Ullanor to make their way to Terra to kill the Emperor. The Red Angel and his sons were brought to Ullanor, but the Iron Warriors had lost a massive amount of legionaries because of these hard battles against the Ultramarines. After 7 years of bloody civil war, the traitors arrived at Terra to begin the siege, and the Iron Warriors and the Lord of Iron began to systematically destroy the defenses of the Imperial Fists over the course of months. Whenever they beat the defenses of the Imperial Fists, they felt sublime pleasure from crushing their rival. But like most things for the Iron Warriors, this would not last long. As the siege of Terra dragged out, the Lord of Iron realized that his allies were useless, with them being a bunch of rabid dogs that just wanted to slaughter and not have a plan. Also, Horus was slowly losing his mind from the power of the Chaos Gods. Perturabo had enough, so he ordered his legion to retreat and left the siege because he and his legion were tired of being this tool and did most of the fighting. He also saw that the other traitor legions had been using this dark power of chaos, and he saw them as weak, so he realized that the Civil War was not about killing the Emperor. After the siege of Terra ended, and the Iron Warriors went to the planet of Sabassus IV and built a massive fortress of traps and 20 miles of bunkers and trenches. In the center of the fortification, the keep of the fort was created, and this massive Iron Warrior construct was called the Eternal Fortress. Dorn, thinking that this battle will be easy, said that he would bring the Lord of Iron in an iron cage back to Terra, but when the Imperial Fist reached the center of the Eternal Fortress, they realized that this was a trap. There were more defenses in the center, and for 3 solar weeks the Imperial Fists were being gunned down and were being pinned down, and it was so bad they used their own Battle Brothers' corpses for cover. Then Rabute Gilman arrived to assist his brother Dorn, and from this caused more deaths of the Iron Warriors, and were pushed back, but with the Imperial Fist being so depleted that they didn't fight for 19 years. Also from this battle and the sacrifice of 400 Imperial Fist Marines, the Lord of Iron ascended to demonhood, and from this, the Iron Warriors became a very powerful Chaos faction, but they still refused a lot of power from Chaos. And that is the history of the Iron Warriors during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. And now I will be going over the structure of the 4th Legion during this time. Now, the 4th Legion had a number of warrior societies in the Iron Warriors Legion, and here are their names: the Brethren of Stone, Brethren of Steel, Brethren of Cold, and Brethren of Thunder. Each of these groups of warriors had a specific role, with the one of Stone being the Iron Warriors who focused on building and fortifying planets and orbital stations. The Brethren of Steel focused on the creation of machinecraft and battle automata and had a very good relationship with the Mechanicus, and the Legio Cybernautica consider them as a rival group. The Brethren of Cold were a group of Iron Warriors who made sure that the warships of the 4th Legion were repaired and rearmed, and their base of operations was on the orbital shipyard of the Rock of Judgment. The Brethren of Thunder were the Forge Masters of the Legion, and they created some of the craziest weapons in the Legion, and it is rumored that they used Xenos tech and strange occult things, and this was even before the heresy. There is one thing that these brotherhoods had was a specialist unit called the Stor Bejacht, and they were the elite siege masters that had extremely destructive weapons in the Legion, but not as bad as the weapons that the Dark Angels had in their vaults. But moving on into the strategic structure of the Iron Warriors, we have the Grand Battalions, which are the same as the chapters of the other legions, but there are differences. They had a bigger stockpile of armor, artillery, and logistical support than other legions due to the high attrition rate of the 4th Legion, and the strength of the Grand Battalions fluctuated. When a battalion had small numbers, they were forced to be put into active units, and in these battalions they commonly divided their forces into cohorts or grand companies. Below them there were line companies and armored units. In the line companies they had at least 100 marines, and in the armored sentries they had 30 to 50 armored units. And each of these grand battalions had elements of the Tyrannosaurus, more commonly known as Dominators, who were the Legion's Terminator veterans. At the top of these grand companies or cohorts had a warsmith that led them, and I will be talking about these warsmiths. These high-ranking Iron Warriors were similar to the Praetors or Lord Commanders of the other legions, and they were mostly skilled siege masters and warlords of the 4th. Think of these legionaries as a mini version of Perturabo who can control any battlefield or siege and are very good forge masters as well, but they were grim and paranoid, and they would have to weed out the weakness in the marines under their command. But there are a group of warsmiths that were above the regular warsmiths, and they were called the Triarch or the Trident, and they acted as Perturabo's advisors and enforcers. Sadly, these 3 warsmiths would reflect their father's increasingly dark and unforgiving nature. Sadly, the Iron Warriors were not able to be the best that they could be due to their father's bitterness, but I think they are still an effective legion even as a powerful chaos faction. But that is the structure of the Iron Warriors Legion during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. But now we have gotten to the end of the video on the history of the Iron Warriors Legion and the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, hit the like button and share with someone who liked this content. And if you are new and would like to see more, hit the subscribe button and bell notification to be notified for when a new video comes out. I thank you guys for watching, and the next video will be on the history of the White Scars Legion. So I will see you guys in the next video. This is Wisdom Warhammer, signing off.